Hey out there, good morning. Good morning to you. Hey, today's video is going to be a little different. I'm not going to be talking about the housing projects. I'm going to be talking about a little bit about how I changed. I wanted to tell you guys this story because maybe it'll help you. I got a reminder on my phone this morning that was related to the last job I had. Now, I haven't worked at that job for almost 4 years. But the reminder came up and a bunch of memories flooded back in because I've made videos about how much I dislike that job. I was thinking about it after I got this reminder. It wasn't necessarily the job that I disliked so much. The longest job I ever had, 3 years. I had it for 3 years. It was the people that I worked for that made it so unappealing. It was a bunch of people that had advanced degrees, master's degrees, going for their doctorates and stuff. And looking back, the egos and the self-serving, it was just too much for me. I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. But the people that I worked with, like the people that I was hired to help, it was a different story. So I got a reminder that I was supposed to work with one of these guys. Oh, I made videos about what I used to do, but let me refresh your memory. My official title was a housing skills facilitator. And what I would do is I would work with these guys that were recently released from psychiatric hospitals to acclimate them back into society for their sake as well as society's sake, because it was a forensics project. And what that meant was the 3 or 4 guys that I worked with specifically, they were incarcerated for a long time in prison as well as psychiatric hospitals. They were all incarcerated for some violent crimes that they did in the past. What I did was when I got hired, I had to jump through hoops to get this job. I mean, I needed a job and it had good benefits. I'm not saying that I jumped into this job because, I have a purpose in life and this is my calling. I'd be dishonest if I told you that. It was something that I knew that I could do, and I needed the job. I knew that it was a forensics project after I got hired, so what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to prejudge these guys. I didn't want to read their files before I got to know them. That was a good move on my part, because if I would have read their files before I met them, these guys, they committed some horrible crimes. But don't forget, they have severe mental illness. The reminder that came up this morning was that I would take one of the guys down once a year down to the police station, the local police station, and he had to register as a sex offender because he was convicted of murder over 30 years ago. And then he was released. I think he spent 20 years in prison and then another 10 or 15 years in a psychiatric hospital. So then, wherever you live, I think that's Megan's law, you have to register each year as a sex offender. So I'd have to bring him down to the police station, sit down with the detective, and make sure all the information was correct and stuff. Getting a little choked up thinking about it. Getting a little choked up because what did Mother Teresa said, it's easy to hug huggable people. Try hugging unhuggable people. Let me tell you a little bit about this guy. By this point, he was already in his 70s. He had the mental faculties, or IQ, I don't know how you would describe it, of maybe a 9 or 10-year-old. Going down to register as a sex offender under Megan's law, if you've never met anybody that does that, for me, I guess it would be easy to point a finger and say, oh, creep, doesn't even deserve to be out, disgusting, less than. And then you get to know somebody, and again, I love the saying, it's circumstances, not virtue. So it's not like I fell into kindness and love and lack of hatred and all that kind of stuff. It's not like that. It's either, I don't think I said this to myself out loud, but it was either you could sink into the mire of hatred and darkness, and resentment, or you could turn it around and you could be compassionate and kind and respectful to somebody that initially maybe you never would have been to. You never would have been like that. If I would have read this guy's file before I met him and worked with him and got to know him a little bit, I would have had a judgment in the back of my head. So I'm glad that I didn't do that. So I'd have to bring him down once a year, so the reminder was on there, because if you don't go down there and register, they're knocking on your door and, you know, they make your life difficult. So I'd go down with this guy to the police station so that he'd register. And I would imagine law enforcement officers, they look at people with this kind of criminal background like, I don't even know if they deserve to live. But I'll tell you, the majority of people that I dealt with, I had to deal with 2 different detectives when I'd bring him down there. They were respectful to this guy. Makes me feel better about this. Now, is this guy still dangerous? I don't know. He's in his 70s. That's not the point I'm making here. The point I'm trying to make here is getting to know someone instead of just hearing something about them or prejudging them has made a big difference in my life. Like, I don't like to get my gratitude on the back of somebody else, which means, like, if somebody's less fortunate than me, I don't like to say, well, at least I'm not as bad as him. But we always have the opportunity to do that if we really need to. This taught me such a good lesson, this scenario I just told you about, because, there was 2 other guys in the house too, and they were not always easy to deal with. I wanted to strangle them a couple times. But not because of the horrible crimes that they committed 25, 30 years ago. Because they were just being asses. It's something dealing with people that have such a horrible past, and then being loving and kind to them. It makes it a lot easier when I come out of those situations and deal with much less severe histories. So that's one of the lessons I learned. You know, like, everybody, if they're walking on this earth, deserves some sort of kindness and compassion. I don't care what kind of crime they committed in the past. I might not want to live next door to them. I might not want to hang out with them on a daily basis. But throwing hatred or darkness their way, or resentment, it affects me. So in a purely self-serving way, I don't want to do it. In a more like godlike way, I think it's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be compassionate and kind to those people that it's difficult to be compassionate and kind to, just like Mother Teresa said. And don't get me wrong, I wasn't hugging this guy or anything. However, if those detectives, when I would bring him down there, if those detectives or law enforcement officers, they showed him some sort of disrespect, let me tell you, they started to become like one of my kids. Like, I was like protecting them. Like, when they were out in society, anybody disrespect them, who are you talking to? Don't get me wrong, now I get them back in the van and be like, what the hell was on your mind? But they became like kind of like family to me, and I didn't want to see them get hurt. So there's a couple lessons in there that I learned, and I don't know, maybe you guys can get something out of that. It's funny, all the times I said how much I hated that job, and then I got that reminder this morning, and I was like, I really did dislike that job. But I got some lessons from that job that'll go with me for the rest of my life.